In a small area of the Umbrian Valley of Italy walked a simple poverello, a poor man who had fallen deeply in love with Jesus Christ. It was in this relationship with the divine that allowed him to discover a simple and profound truth: God working in and through all creation. That relationship with the universe, from the sun to the moon, from the coolest of flowing water to the warming fire that blazed, from the breath of life, from every people every day to the final breath taken away at death, were connected to each other, wrapped and held together in the very being of God. This humble beggar in 1224 decided to encapsulate this theological reality in song. Many have argued that it was the first medieval poem to be written not in the learned language of Latin. No, this jongleur decided that he wanted all people to be able to understand and sing the praise that all creation could give God. That the all-powerful Lord, creator of heaven and earth, that therefore the poor man chose this simple troubadour, titled this song The Canticle of the Creature. And that man was St. Francis of Assisi. Welcome to this workshop titled Living Laudato, Catholic Scouting. It is sponsored by the National Catholic Committee on Scouting. Our hope is that this workshop is twofold. First, we hope to break open the power and the beauty of Pope Francis' papal encyclical Laudato Si. And second, that this workshop will help our youth, parish ministers, pastors, bishops, all those understand the complementary aspect of our Catholic faith and scouting. That the Catholic scouting can be a means of formation of our youth and the vehicle of evangelization of the gospel of Jesus Christ. So let's just take a moment and look at the format of this workshop that will encompass three major points of the Holy Father's encyclical, Laudato Si. My name is Father Roger Lopez. I'm a Franciscan friar, and I'm going to be working with you today looking at a couple of main points as we go through this particular workshop. We're going to examine the techno-crisis of today that the Holy Father talks about, reflect on the response found in Laudato Si, and discover how Catholic scouting can empower youth to live out the values of Laudato Si. So let's begin. We don't have to go far to encounter technology in our society. You're watching this video by means of the internet, streaming technology, cameras, lighting. We have cell phones and tablets, and this gives us an awesome ability to do micro-medical technology and procedures, as well as creating self-driving cars. Technology is interwoven into the very fabric of our culture. But the Holy Father talks about how technology can easily be an answer for all the problems in the world. That we can constantly fall back on technology as the answer, and therefore it can go unchecked, doing anything in the name of progress. This is the techno-crisis His Holiness is surfacing. He writes, "Yet we can once more broaden our vision. We have the freedom needed to limit and direct technology. We can put it at the service of another type of progress, one which is healthier, more human, more social, more integral." He's trying to say if we can break from this mentality that technology is the answer to all things, there's an opportunity for liberation, for connectedness to flourish. See, it's important to understand that as Christians, we don't oppose technology. No, there's countless Catholic schools that cultivate STEM programs. We want to deepen young men and women, our youth, in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. At our Franciscan high school, Roger Bacon, which is where I'm recording this at, where I teach and serve in the theology department. But we have other friars that serve in different departments. For example, One of our other Franciscans uses his master's degree in engineering in order to teach computer programming, website design, robots, and engineering. Our technology department that oversees computer servers, manages the one-to-one iPad usage, everything with a power cord, is directed by Father Mark, one of our Franciscans. Actually, we would say in no way, especially as Catholics, does faith and science, are they opposed? Actually, to the contrary. St. John Paul II once said that science and technology are wonderful products of a God-given human creativity. He said this when he was addressing the scientists and representatives of the United Nations University in 1981. See, God gives humanity the capacity to use our minds, to use the gift of intellect in order to seek, discover, explore, and create. The danger is that goodness and truth flow from this technological and economic power. That's the danger that the Holy Father is trying to talk about. So we have to see that these things, that technology as a privilege to create, that where it comes from, but that doesn't free us from the responsibility to develop healthy habits and actions that are tied with the technology that we create. See, the reality is that privilege and responsibility are two sides of the same coin. There are lots of privileges that we can use and have with the use of technology, but on the other side is the reality of responsibility that comes with that. But it's important to also understand that technology is neither good nor bad. It's a reality that exists within the world at this current time of history. This would be no different than some other realities that exist within the world. Money. Money is a reality that we use. It's a form of commerce and a currency in order for exchange. Knowledge is another reality in the sense of learning and exploring. Popularity. This also, too, is another reality that exists within the world. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. Let's say, for example, you have the captain of a high school basketball team. This captain can encounter fame and honor of that position. That fame, that honor, is neither good nor bad. It is a reality of that role. How that person uses that reality, that depends on them. So too with us. How we use the realities of the world depends on us, and that will determine its moral value. So when we're looking at this in Catholic Scouting, like for example, we use our cell phones in order to navigate using GPS, this global positioning service. But we can also take phones and in order to take photos and film in order to remember and relive great memories out in nature. But there's a reality also, and those are good things, but there's also a reality that we can use cell phones in wrong ways. We can use it to bully, like on social media. We can use it to share inappropriate content. The cell phone is a tool. It's a reality that exists. It's neither good nor bad. How we, as a human person, use it, that becomes the very question. And that's what Pope Francis is inviting us into, is that technology is neither good nor bad, but we haven't maybe stopped to reflect on it. And that's the invitation of all Christians, of all people of goodwill, is how to interact. How well do we interact with the environment and in the sense of responsibility and care? Catholic Scouting tries to reinforce these same values found in Pope Francis's Laudato Si encyclical. This is, of course, brought together with BSA Scouting. Like, for example, there are certain merit badges that stress the virtue of a moderation of life. Things like personal finance, physical fitness, hiking, swimming. These merit badges help one to realize the value of temperance, of living out a life in the medium, that the virtue is in the middle. This is also seen in the Scout Oath, that where we say that we strive to do our duty, to do our best for God and country. It's a reality that we are both citizens of two homes, an earthly home as well as a heavenly home that is yet to come. And we have to be these good citizens, these good, what we would use the word, stewards of this home that we are currently in. But in addition to the experience of these type of, let's say, merit badges, we also encounter a long-standing spiritual practice of abstaining and fasting in Catholic Scouting. You don't have to go very far to realize that this exists. We also encounter this long-standing spiritual practice of abstaining and fasting in Catholic Scouting. Campouts and hikes are probably one of the best ways to disconnect from technology. There's something about staring into a fire in the middle of nowhere, just surrounded by creation, that pulls us in ways that maybe we never even realized, that God can speak to us in unbelievable ways. Recently, I served as a Catholic chaplain at BSA Scouting's National High Adventure Base in Cimarron, New Mexico, called Philmont Scout Ranch. As I would hike and encounter numerous crews from all over the United States, I would talk to them about their experiences at Philmont. Many of them would share to me that it had been the first time that they have ever encountered such a long period of time away from their cell phone, and how they were able to be present in a different way with those around them. That storytelling and listening became essential currency to the economics of their hiking group. I remember every year that one of our theology teachers here that teaches juniors teaches morality. And she talks about the importance of disconnecting, about the challenge of technology. And she gives all of her students the opportunity to fast for 24 hours from their cell phone. So, in consultation with the parents, the student can choose to turn in their phone at the beginning of class, and they would get it the next day at the beginning. So, with the exception of using their iPad to do work, the student agrees that they will not use any type of technology for recreational purposes. And while there are some that struggle with that, and some that are not able to hold on to that 24 hours, and some find it to be really disturbing, most come back and share about the reality that they find, the beauty that they find in the midst of that fasting. Some have talked about how when their parents have come to pick them up and drive them home, that they finally look out the window and they see things that they never saw before, people, places. Some have talked about how at dinner, typically people were all on their cell phones at the dinner table. But because the student was doing this fasting, their parents and other siblings chose to do it as well. And one talked about how it was conversation that they had never experienced around the dinner table, how they shared their days, laughter, stories, and struggles. The reality is that we, as a Christian people, have to realize that there's certain realities, but there's also priorities. That if we want to connect, if we want to be in relationship with others, technology can be a means of that, but it can't be the end. And that's what His Holiness is talking about. That's what Pope Francis is talking about, the crisis today, is that it can easily go unchecked. Maybe the invitation is as a family to set certain boundaries, certain agreements, that we will have technology-free time, technology-free zones, areas of the house where there won't be the use of this. We do that in our Catholic school. Students are not able to use their cell phones. And the idea is, especially in the cafeteria, there's a communication and a presence that they're able to have that sometimes you can't. Now, we can all say, well, I can juggle both, but there's a reality of why we shouldn't drive and use our cell phone. we're not able to be totally present when we're behind the wheel, as well as trying to send a little message. So too with the reality of trying to be present with someone else. So there's lots of different ways that we can disconnect and fast and abstain. Pope Francis talks about how everything is related, and we human beings are united as brothers and sisters in a wonderful pilgrimage, woven together by the love of God for each of his creatures, and which also unites us in fond affection with Brother Sun, Sister Moon, Brother River, and Mother Earth. It's important for us to get outside. It's when we realize that there's a connection that we have to our environment, we come to realize the reality of how God works. God holds all things in being. God, which is being itself. Our reality, the essence of who we are, is just as connected with the essence of the sun and the moon and the water and the fire. We have to get outside in order to realize maybe some of this beauty. We have to stop and reflect upon ourselves. And it does take a lot of courage in order to disconnect from social media, from online streaming, and from our electrical devices. In Catholic Scouting, one can discover themselves in maybe a deep way. We do a Catholic St. George trek, which is a 14-day trek. And in this St. George trek, men and women, young men and women come from all over the United States as Catholics in order to share the beautiful adventure, but also to experience this inner retreat, this hiking at Philmont in order to connect in a deeper way with the reality of those around us, but also the environment. They're accompanied with priests, brothers, sisters, religious, both men and women, who help them in this journey. But these are not just things that happen in New Mexico. There are numerous types of events that are happening all throughout the United States in every diocese. Every diocese has a National Catholic Committee on Scouting, a particular region that helps to do retreats and hikes and different things like that so that we can break open our faith through scouting. Catholic Scouting gives so many young people the ability to experience the reality of St. Francis's understanding that we're all in relationship with one another. That Pope Francis also encourages us to connect and realize that we're a connection. That privilege and responsibility go together. That two sides of the same coin. But we would be fooling ourselves to just hear this information and do nothing. We have to act. A great Jesuit saint named Peter Claver talked about that we must first learn to preach with our hands before we can preach with our lips. We have to be people of action. Getting outside with creation, finding that connection with God who holds all things in being is an important piece. The beauty of Pope Francis's encyclical, Laudato Si, is that it's an invitation. It's an invitation to stop, reflect, and connect. That it's an invitation for us to examine our relationships with the divine, to ponder our relationships with others, and to honestly discern our relationship with the gift of creation. But we can't just ponder, we can't just reflect. The invitation is then to act, like Peter Claver says. We have to use our hands. We have to go out and relook at some of our practices, some of the impact that we give. And this could be inconvenient. This will be inconvenient. This will be difficult. But the reality is the spiritual life always is. The change of one's heart, the change of one's mind is always filled with difficulty. Whether you're on the sports field with football or on the court with basketball, whether you're playing baseball or softball, whatever it is, track or field, there is a sacrifice and a challenge that comes to it. But Catholic Scouting can help you to try to be present, to try to look and reflect, but also try to act, to conserve and renew our environment. This happens in so many different ways. Catholic Scouting can give parishes as well as youth programs the structure and means in order to do this, as part of their parish ministries as young as 7 years old. But it can provide leadership opportunities for our young men and women as young as 11 to as old as 21. Today, I invite all of us to take to heart Pope Francis's call to stop, reflect, and act. Do not let this opportunity for Christ to speak to you today to pass by. Take to heart the reflection questions that will follow. Be bold. Be courageous. Maybe we need to refashion the way we use technology. And that will be scary. But the gift that comes from that change, the beauty that comes from that opportunity, from that invitation, that Christ says so many times in the gospel to come, is that the person who does finds a reality, a happiness that goes beyond measure and that will never, ever run out. May this time of living Laudato through Catholic Scouting, seen in this way, may it touch all of our hearts. May it help us to connect with the divine and understand more about how this relationship works. So, in the great words of Saint Francis of Assisi, to all of you, peace and good. So, as you look at these reflection questions, I invite you, take a moment, pause this video at any time, and maybe as a group or with other people, to stop and reflect openly and honestly, and maybe how God, the Holy Spirit, is carving out and inviting you for Him to rush in. What is the value of living a balanced life, of living a balanced physical, emotional, and spiritual life? How does technology hurt our relationship with others? But in this question, I invite you not to look at it so generally, but how does it hurt your relationship with others? What prevents us from disconnecting with technology and being present to others? And finally, where is Christ calling me to say yes with technology, to maybe refashion, relook? From all those at the National Catholic Committee on Scouting, here at the National Catholic Youth Conference, we hope that living Laudato in Catholic Scouting helps to provide a great connection of how we can see the divine and encounter Him through the goodness of Catholic Scouting in the environment.